Well, buckle up because this is going to be the talking head video that many of you have been asking from me for quite a while now. So it's been a little over a month since the update arrived in a not so spectacular way, and I can go on and on about some of the things that were broken or otherwise destabilizing, at least in the top tier environment where this video is going to be focusing on. But we're not going to be getting into any of those problems today. No, instead, we're going to be talking about the turret basket. And after seeing so many Reddit posts, the comments, both here and on my stream, in the Discord servers, it's safe to say that not many of you guys were on board with this change. And I think it's safe to say neither was I. But as a player, we reap what we sow because we did ask for such changes a couple of years ago. Now, for context, during the height of a major tension between Gaijin and the community, which kind of seemed to be the norm to some degree, they opted to compromise by giving us what we wanted and a little bit more. Maybe a bit too much, I think, but we'll get more into that a little bit later in this video. But it wasn't without a fight on their part, which honestly confused me at the time, but I'm still happy to see such changes come through. To add further context, for those who may not know, one of the major changes that came through and are still coming are the independent modules to existing and all future vehicles, at least in the high tier environment. Those changes introduced new auto-loading mechanisms, hydraulic systems, fire control systems, power systems, and of course, the all too familiar and more recent addition, the turret baskets. A new module that is currently found on all the Abrams and Leopard variants alongside various SPAAs, etc., but we won't be going too far into those, except for the Leopard 2K, and I'm not entirely sure as to why. I'm sorry to say, guys, I think Gaijin might catch on after this video. Yeah, it's been kind of the norm, so I've come to find out. Now, this module basically acts like the new turret ring, except that the turret ring now extends all the way to the floor of the vehicles in question, which means if you get shot pretty much anywhere and a bit of spalling decides to hit this module to any capacity, you are effectively disabled. Now, imagine having your turret ring and the engine shot out in one go, which is an incredibly frustrating experience that I am all too familiar with. Now, it's just that much worse. There goes that turret basket. And there goes my turret basket. And there's a 290M to my left. Womp womp. Big ol' womp womp there, buddy. I'm so sorry. I'm not kidding. I've had this happen to me so many times. It really isn't a fun experience. But I guess that leads into the topic of this video, and that is, what do I think of the turret basket, and has it changed how I play with the affected vehicles? Well, the short answer to that is not really. Now, I can go on and on about the realism behind it and how realistically the basket is made out of a much lighter material. Doesn't have many systems in it that would shut the turret traversability down entirely. And I'm saying that with asterisks too, because this isn't an area that I'm very familiar with, I guess IRL. However, to keep things simple, this new basket extends the turret ring vulnerability, and that's pretty much it. But there's always a quick catch to it. Fighting against vehicles with such a module has made the experience, in my opinion, much more linear, meaning the fights are much easier because as it goes, he who sees who first will likely win that fight. And even in the real world, tankers are trained to make that first shot count, hence why many nations put a huge emphasis on not only crew training, but superior optics and subsystems related to it. But I digress. Being able to reliably disable your opponent so as to add to your kill counter is satisfying. This simply enhances that, albeit it does feel entirely unfair at times, as you'll kind of see in the gameplay bits, as well as in my previous and even future videos. So to continue in short, I don't mind the changes as it's made my fights a bit simpler. Regardless of where I put my rounds in, say, in Abrams, I can expect to immediately disable the turret ring, enabling me to easily finish off said Abrams. Not that I wasn't able to already do that, but for some reason, the Abrams is insanely simple to destroy or even disable in a single hit. I mean, that's true even before the basket change. I mean, their win rate kind of reflected that. And I mean, even in the latest major trailer for the game, they show it there, and that itself kind of says a lot about the Abrams. And to add, I found that the Abrams turret basket also adds a bit of extra spalling, though near the end of the fighting compartment, but still it feels incredibly unfair at times. But as for the leopards, it's a completely different story. I found the basket shot to be a little bit less reliable, at least from the front, as you see in this little snippet right here. Now, I've had many moments where the rounds would simply go through while doing very little damage, ultimately making me regret my decision to head on a leopard 2. Though from the sides, that's not so much of an issue. And now, yeah, we get to the cons of these changes. And to put it simply, it comes down to the fairness of these implementations. Now, not long after the modules were brought in for every major vehicle in the high tier environment, I've noticed right away that some of the modules were not being modeled fairly. A good example of that is the T series of tanks. That being the auto loaders for most of these vehicles, if not all of them in this case. Sure, this change makes it fairly straightforward to disable the vehicle's reloading capabilities. However, that's all it does. The vehicles do not incorporate the turret ring into the quote-unquote turret basket, which again is also said loading mechanism. So even if you outright black out this module, the vehicle can still move its turret and potentially survive the engagement, and more so if the breach isn't disabled, because you can shoot back whatever they originally had loaded in that pipe. And to add, I've noticed that the basket doesn't add extra spalling, at least not for these ones anyways, but that isn't always true. Maybe that comes down to my own experiences and not outright noticing it in game. Now, I'm sure there's more going on than what I'm seeing. The horizontal guidance component not being attached to the basket, but then again, there are no critical subsystems such as the hydraulic pumps, fluid, etc. that you would find with, say, the Abrams and even the Leopards. If you know what I'm talking about, you know exactly what it is. So when it comes to the fairness overall, I think Gaijin may have missed that mark. But then again, destroying the T-series of tanks is relatively straightforward and at times even simple. And given its size, there's much more that can go wrong, but I guess that comes down to a player's perspective on fairness. Now, moving on to other vehicles such as the Leclercs, the Aretes, the Type 10s, etc., which are all missing their own basket modules. Not that I'm complaining, given that those vehicles right now are unusually survivable compared to their Abrams and even Leopard counterparts. But if you've come to notice, those vehicles are now on top of the boards with not only excellent win rates, but also pretty solid performance. Now, that's not going to last, of course, because Gaijin already made a mention that they're going to be adding turret baskets to pretty much everything at top tier. But hey, you know what? From what I've noticed, the Leclerc is now a scary vehicle to fight, more so than it was previously. So with that in mind, I guess it's safe to say that I don't really like these changes, as it does further simplify fighting at top tier and is very frustrating to experience should you be on the receiving end of it. And I'm sure many of you guys already figured this out firsthand, but as the updates roll through, Gaijin will slowly be adding more modules to the already existing vehicles, as already mentioned, and eventually those playing in the earlier tiers will likely get to experience this firsthand as well. Now imagine the Shermans and Tigers with similar modules, maybe not turret baskets per se, but more stuff that can go wrong and break. Now that's gonna make things a little bit more interesting down there. Now, when it comes to moving forward, this is something that we will eventually fully accept and likely forget about. As the game grows, more players come in, the years pass by, they won't mind this, as they'll get to experience this game with its already entirety. But for the rest of us, the only thing we can hope for from Gaijin is that they further refine this for the higher tier vehicles, because it ain't gonna change. There is nothing we can do or say to get them to take this back. And I'm sorry to say this in a very, forward manner, but it's the honest truth. Trust when I say I've already come to terms with this change, and it's simply another frustrating thing that I have to look forward to. And I gotta put an emphasis on that too. It's been driving me nuts at times, but it's part of the game and it is what it is. But yeah, that's it. That's my take on the whole Turret Basket stuff. It sucks. I don't personally like it, but it is what it is. And the only thing we can do now as players is honestly move on and understand that we asked for such modules and now we reap what we sow. And trust me, I was all for it too. I voted for it and I thought, cool, everyone was gonna get it. The battles are gonna be a little bit easier, but I don't think it was implemented fairly, at least not for the time being. But then again, Gaijin already made a mention that they're going to, so I guess that kind of is what it is. However, I do hope you guys did enjoy this talking head video, as it was a long one for me, but I genuinely thank you all for taking the time to listen to my ramble. And as always, if you enjoyed this, let me know in the comment section or by dropping a thumbs up. And I will see you not only in the next video, guys, or even in those, those streams, but also in the upper VR environment where we have to all deal with this. It's not fun, but I guess we're just gonna have to grow with it as time moves on. So as always, I'll see you next time.